all of us at today's session. So as you may have seen, is that today we are going to have a very, very interesting session, and we are going to just learn together. And as you have seen also from the poster and from all the posts we've written regarding this presentation, our topic is Beyond Policies. That is building a culture of quality through teamwork in the medical laboratory. So we are going to dive into this topic, and I'm hoping that it's going to be an insightful session where we are going to learn how to foster a true culture of quality through effective teamwork, leadership, and also communication. So with that, allow me to introduce our today's speaker, who is Davis Wekesa. And Davis Wekesa is not new to us. Davis Wekesa is a dedicated professional with a bachelor's degree in medical lab sciences. He has a very strong foundation in diagnostic lab practice and is very passionate about quality healthcare delivery. So with that, Davis, if you can hear me, you can unmute and say hi, and then you proceed.
Thank you, Frederick. I believe I'm audible enough.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, allow me welcome you to today's webinar. It is always a pleasure having a discussion with my professional colleagues about matters that touch directly to us so that we improve our service delivery in our point of care. As the moderator has put it out clearly, today's topic of discussion is beyond policies. And when we talk of beyond policies, we are talking of how do we build a culture of quality through teamwork in our laboratory settings. And just to have a better understanding of this topic before even we dive fully into it, I believe many of us are asking, what is this topic about? What is the real reason behind this topic? When we talk of beyond policies, what does it mean? So when we look at beyond policies, we are specifically looking at as a laboratory quality not being defined by SOPs, checklists, or accreditations. Okay, we do not want to define laboratory quality as availability of SOPs, availability of checklists that have been filled or ticked appropriately, or presence of accreditation. That does not give a clear definition of actually what quality means in laboratory services. So we are talking of, we need to go beyond the SOPs. We need to go beyond the checklists. We need to go beyond that tick that has been put on that checklist. Okay, so through this, we look at laboratory quality as how people actually live out quality on a daily basis. Okay, we go beyond the SOPs, we go beyond the checklists, we go beyond accreditation, and actually look at on a very daily basis, how do you as a team, how do you as an individual actually live quality? And we look at the aspect of building a culture of quality. What does it then bring into our mind? This means cultivating shared values, behaviors, and attitudes that make quality everyone's responsibility and not just QA officers. Because in our mindsets, most of us think that it's the QA officer's responsibility to actually ensure operational quality of lab services. But that is not the case. That is just an oversight role that has been dedicated to somebody. It is the responsibility of every and each one of us in the laboratory setting to actually ensure that we build the culture of quality as such. And when you talk of teamwork, What are we referring to? We are referring to collaborations across roles, be it you are a technologist, be it you are a phlebotomist, be it you are a pathologist, be it a data clerk in the lab, be it cleaners in that lab. If they do participate in ensuring that we have quality as such, we must ensure that we have collaboration around these areas. So it is very, very important to have this discussion today. Of course, on the objectives of today's presentation, we'll be looking at what are the limitations, the downsides of solely relying on policies and procedures in achieving laboratory quality. Then we also look at an emphasis on the role of teamwork, mutual respect, and shared responsibility in sustaining accuracy, timeliness, and reliability of our outcomes as a diagnostic tool. We also look at ways in which we can promote staff engagement. And we also look at, we have an illustration on how collaboration and empowerment of specific staffs or staffs in our laboratory settings actually reduces resistance to uptake of new ideas and improves morale and enhance service delivery. And finally, of course, we will be demonstrating how creating a culture of ownership transforms quality and compliance requirements into the natural way of working. So basically, we have 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 concepts that we'll be having a discussion about just to build a rationale behind this topic. Then we'll dive in team dynamics and then look at various ways in which we can actually improve on collaboration and team dynamics in our areas of work. So these are just some of the highlights for clarity, highlights for better understanding of our topic. We look at quality is more than just policies. And how I wish in this webinar today, we had our managers. How I wish in this webinar today, we had the policymakers. How I wish in this webinar today, we have people actually who are tasked with the responsibility of ensuring new policies are passed down and how we integrate these into our systems so that we have a one-on-one discussion for better understanding. So when we talk of quality just being more than policies, this actually means policies provide structure. They provide structures on how things should be done. It provides structure on how matters should be handled. But the very policies do not guarantee excellence. You might have a policy with regard to patient management, a policy with regard to phlebotomy services. Yes, you have that policy at hand, but if that policy is not effectively implemented, it does not actually guarantee excellence. So under this, we look at true quality. True quality actually thrives where teamwork, mutual respect, and shared responsibility exists. We leverage on teamwork, we leverage on mutual respect for each other, be it management to staff, staff to management, horizontal relationship, vertical respect, horizontal respect. It has to be existing for true quality to actually survive in an area of work. Then number 2, every role matters. Every role in our work area matters. Be it a cleaner, be it a technician, be it a technologist, be it a lab officer, be it a pathologist. In their own context of responsibility, every role matters. From sample reception to data reporting, each professional is important in that area. We must recognize that fact. If you are in management, you must know that each professional niche is actually important when it comes to implementation of these matters. So accuracy, timeliness, and reliability actually depends on collaboration at all stages of laboratory how do I put it, laboratory dynamics, it all depends with collaboration. You cannot isolate one section of a lab, then you expect that there will be fluidity when it comes to implementation of matters. So every department, every profession is, as so long as they have been given the responsibility to discharge their duties in the lab, they must be respected because that position matters. Of course, we look at engagement beyond compliance. What does this mean? What does this mean for us as people operating in the lab, as lab professionals? What does it mean for us? Engagement beyond compliance actually tells you that quality should be understood, quality should be valued, and quality should be supported by all staffs. So if you cannot engage all the staffs to understand, to value, and support quality, then it will be off the mark. You cannot achieve true quality with that. In true quality, we must have a clear understanding, we must have value, and we must have support from all the staffs actually involved in these processes. And under this, we talk of moving beyond the tick box mentality, the tick box mindset, to a culture of ownership. Okay, we are going beyond a ticked checklist. You know, you can find a checklist, for example, temperature monitoring checklist. You find it has been ticked very, very neatly, very nicely. But the moment you start questioning the tick, the moment you start interrogating that tick behind that checklist, is when you will find a beehive of issues. So under engagement beyond compliance, we are talking of move from a tick box mindset to a culture of ownership. Let that tick you put on that checklist actually be justified, so that when it's interrogated, there's actually a mark of quality behind that. There are situations where somebody goes to a temperature charting chart, he puts a very good tick. When you come and see, it's nice, it's actually nicely done. But when you actually go beyond and start interrogating that tick, you might even find that that thermometer was never working, or even up to the moment that you are reviewing, it's not working, but it has been ticked that it has been done very nicely. So we must move beyond the tick box mindset to a culture of ownership. Of course, when you look at empowerment and participation, this is for us who are in management positions. Always involve staff in decision making. Okay? You see, we are humans. You cannot push a concept down my throat when you did not actually involve me in that decision before we started this. Because decision making is a journey, and it must involve each and every staff that actually takes part in that lab. So of course, we as those people who are tasked with the responsibility of management, we must ensure that we must encourage raising of concerns from our staff and suggestions for improvement. In your monthly meeting, do you first hold monthly meetings? If you do hold monthly meetings, then it's your responsibility to ensure that request or ask for staff suggestions. Build consensus. Decision-making process should involve all the staff. Request for feedback from each and every staff member that is present, so that you build a concept together. When a concept is built together, implementation becomes as easy as possible because everybody takes pride in that concept. Of course, we in management, we must recognize contribution to strengthen motivation. I know most people will not take this lightly, but we must look at it. We must move away from the concept of riding on other staff's backs, okay? Your staff has given a very concrete suggestion. When it comes to implementation, that staff does not appear anywhere, in that suggestion. But you are not the originator of this suggestion. That is a demotivation factor. So once we recognize contribution from individual staff, we must also give acknowledgement and recognize those contributions. And this goes a long way in strengthening motivation. We should not take pride. We should not take over success that was not even originally ours. We must always look for ways in which we appreciate the originators of ideas and we recognize them, because that goes way beyond even financial motivation for these staff. Of course, we also look at collaboration and enforcement, or collaboration versus enforcement. We must build a culture of collaboration, be it vertical collaboration or horizontal collaboration, management to staff, staff to staff. It must be all about collaboration, not enforcement. The moment the top-down approach actually enhances enforcement, when you enforce policies on people, it's like shoving down food down the throat of a little kid, okay? It creates resistance. We must feel part of these concepts. We must feel part of these ideas that we want to bring into enforcement. So top-down enforcement actually creates resistance. These policies that are actually being reasoned have been created by the top management. They are poured down upon the staff. The staff were not actually involved. They were not consulted. That creates a resistance, okay? So we look at, instead of creating an environment of enforcement, let us create an environment of collaboration where people feel they are part of these decisions that we are actually intending to pass across. So collaboration goes way beyond improving morale of your staffs. It actually strengthens teamwork and enhances smoother operations. You consulted me, so I feel part and parcel of the decision that you want to put in place. We have had a discussion about it, so I feel that I'm fully aware and part of the discussion. So when it comes to implementation, it's easy. But if you enforce, I will definitely create resistance for that. And number 6, we look at building trust through quality. So we look at high quality services inspire confidence from clinicians, patients, and stakeholders. Of course, when you give a high quality service, you will improve your confidence score for people who actually rely on those services. And those are clinicians, patients, and other stakeholders. And it also looks at the consistency in offering these high quality services creates ownership. And once we have consistency and ownership, they go away beyond into turning quality into a natural way of working, okay? It's like creating quality into your DNA. Once it's transcribed, it becomes part of that DNA. So it's become part and parcel of the organization. It becomes your culture to make sure that you are discharging quality services as much as you can, okay? Of course, look at excellence as a culture. When staff feel ownership of quality, excellence is no longer just becomes embedded into daily practice. Of course, that is why I was saying we must go beyond the policies. We look beyond the policies. We must make quality part of the daily practice for it to be embedded fully into the system as such. For those of you who have joined, probably I mentioned this, the tick box mindset before you joined. So this is an opportunity for us to refresh about it. When you talk of tick box mindset or tick box concept, what does it bring in your mind? It refers to a situation where people focus only on meeting the minimum requirements, okay? For example, you are just checking boxes on a form or an SOP. Temperature charting done today, tick. Done this, tick. But it does not actually give a genuine understanding or commitment to the purpose behind that tick. I said that once we start questioning that tick in your lab, do we find a true mark of quality behind that tick? Or is just a compliance aspect? Or is just because the policy says that on a daily basis, mark as done, chat as done. So you came, you did not even do machine maintenance, but you went to the log and chatted. So once we start questioning the true quality mark behind that mark, there's none, okay? So in the laboratory context, of course, we talk of tick box mindset, means following procedures only because they are required and not because actually staff believe in their value. You are just ticking because the policy says you tick, okay? But do you actually believe in the value behind that tick? That is a question that each one of us must consistently ask ourselves. We also look at completing documentation to satisfy audits rather than encourage data integrity or enforce data integrity. We just completing documents. Oh, we have audits next week. So what do we do as staff? We go on filling documentations that were actually not done, okay? So yes, we want to satisfy compliance to queries, but then the data integrity questions are raised afterwards. Of course, we look at treating quality as compliance-driven instead of culture-driven. Quality can never be compliance-driven. If you attach a compliance mark on quality, there's a problem. Quality is a culture. Quality must be embedded in all laboratory practices on a daily basis by every staff, okay? So once we start looking at quality as compliance, then we have a problem, okay? Especially paper compliance. We are compliant on paper, but on ground, as people say, things are different, okay? And this happens to very many of us, very many of us. Externally, people see quality that actually supposed to be, but internally, we know where the pitfalls are. So we should start rethinking our processes. We should start then looking at culture-driven compliance or culture-driven quality rather than compliance-driven quality. Because compliance-driven quality gives a wrong statement about us. It gives a wrong statement about you as a facility. It gives you a wrong statement about you as a laboratory officer or laboratory technology discharging those duties. So we have to embed culture in our operations on a daily basis by every staff that is working in the lab. So I mentioned some time back when we were starting this that every role, every professional, as long as they have the tasks that have been assigned to them in the lab, they are important. We must appreciate and recognize the role of every professional as bound by lab operations. So this is just an illustration to better understand the topic at hand, where we look at the lab services, the lab operations, the lab structures as an orchestra. We look at each staff member. Assume that this is an orchestra. Orchestra has different musicians, there are different instruments of play, but all these instruments have to harmoniously interact for there to be success in an event, okay? So you look at each staff member, assume that each staff member is a musician in an orchestra. Each of these musicians have their own instruments, different areas of expertise. We have those ones with guitars, we have those ones with saxophones or whatever. So they have different instruments. Those instruments of these musicians are actually our skills in this case. The SOPs or the policies that we have are actually the music sheet. So you look at it that If everyone plays in isolation or without listening to what the other party is playing, this results to noise. It's just pure noise. But when each person understands the score, respects the conductor's guidance, and plays in harmony with others, this results in flawless performance. Therefore, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, quality laboratory excellence is the symphony we achieve when we have these musicians playing harmoniously together. It also reflects directly to our laboratory operations. We cannot operate in isolation. That is a take-home point. Be it those tasked with the responsibility, the HOs, the managers, sectional heads, you cannot operate in isolation. You must have every staff, every professional embroiled in this discussion actually take part. You have to embody each and every member to participate in this for you to attain quality. And the quality we are talking about is what is being referred as flawless performance as such. Then we look at team dynamics. What does team dynamics actually mean to you as a laboratory staff? Wherever you are, probably you could be alone in that lab. Even if you are alone in that lab, there are other departments that you timely, from at one point to another, you directly interact with them when it comes to service provision. So, team dynamics. Team dynamics refers to patterns of interaction, relationships, and behaviors that actually shape how a group works together. A group can start from 2, 3, 4, 5. We can have a group of 100. We can have a group of, okay? So it's just looking at how do we interact? How do we relate with each other? What are interaction behaviors? Because at the end of the day, we have to discharge duties together. So in the laboratory context, of course, we are looking at how staff collaborate, communicate, and support each other in delivering accurate, quality, and reliable results. How do you collaborate? How do you communicate? How do you support each other? Are you the kind of a colleague that if a junior staff came with a request to you, for example, they're having issues with IQC performance, instead of guiding on how they will actually handle these issues, you go on doing the issues yourself, handling the matters yourself, okay? Like you do not have the time to interact. You do not have the passion to interact. You better do it and leave it. That isolative way of operation actually drains. We want to create a culture where staff, we collaborate. We create a culture where we can communicate. We create a culture where we can support each other in delivering accurate and reliable results. So we look at key elements of team dynamics. Number one, communication. We must have clear, respectful, and timely exchange of information between departments or between individuals. If there is a query in sample reception, bench technologies or reporting technologies, those who are tasked with the processes of verification, we must have communication, clear, respectful, and timely. You might give clear but disrespectful kind of communication. That is not what we are advocating for. We must have clear, respectful, and timely exchange of information for the betterment of the patient. At the end of the day, we are all focused on that patient. How does that patient get timely accurate and reliable results to enable in discharge. Of course, we have different roles and responsibility. Each member or each profession within our lab context must actually understand their duties and also understand how these duties contribute to the bigger picture of quality. As a phlebotomist, do you really understand your duties? First of all, understand the duties of a phlebotomist. Once you have understood the duties of a phlebotomist, then ask yourself, interrogate yourself, how do these duties and responsibilities of mine actually contribute to the final quality outcome to the patient? Of course, we also look at trust and respect. There must be mutual respect, as this mutual respect actually builds confidence in colleagues and reduces errors caused by second guessing or conflict. We have people, not to be biased, but we have managers who do not even trust their own colleagues, okay? So that at the end of the day, once work is done, you go on sniffing around to you want to know what did he do, what did she do, how did she do it, okay? You know, there's a very thin line between mentorship and second guessing. What is on the other side after you have identified the problems that this staff caused? That is what one thing we should, because if you have a properly trained staff, competent staff, you should trust that that staff can then discharge those duties, okay? But that does not also give you, as a staff, an allowance of intending to actually manipulate the process. So kindly, trust has to go with respect on both sides so that we get to avoid constant conflicts between ourselves. Of course, within that team, we must also have understanding of the conflict resolution process. Of course, as a team raised by different people coming from different areas, you are just meeting because of that job. There will be disagreements, okay? There will be healthy disagreements relating to work. I'm not talking about disagreements that are not associated with work. That is a different case, okay? So there must be a healthy way of handling disagreements without bias, because if these disagreements are not handled properly, they will directly lead to poor morale between staffs, and that will definitely affect discharging of duties as such. There must be a clear understanding of collaboration. I said we must look at ways on how do we collaborate to bring out an idea clearly as compared to enforcing, because enforcing is like you are bringing it down whether you like it or not, and you must absorb it whether you like it or not. That is not the best way. You see, these people that you are dealing with, that is somebody's husband, that is somebody's wife. So we must look at a way in which how do we bring it out as clearly as possible so that staff do not feel we have actually infringed in their rights as such. We must find a collaborative way in how we can solve issues. Of course, collaboration comes in various ways when it comes to solving problems, improving workflows. When you identify nonconformities, collaborate with that staff, drive a clear understanding so that that staff feels part of it, okay? Do not go and sit somewhere in an office and start writing things here and there, solving a problem without involving the staff that was actually part and parcel of that problem from the word go, because it will lead to recurrence of such like issues. So this staff must actually be involved in it from the word go. Of course, we must look at another principle is adaptability. We must look at ways in which teams should adjust quickly to changes in policies, technology, and workload to sustain better quality, okay? Because if there are changes in policies, if there are changes in workloads, if there are changes in technology, these will lead to it demands for adaptability as such. So how do we prepare our teams for adaptability? Because that is a routine thing, okay? If staff feel part of a program, if staff feel part of a program from the word go, there will be no problem with adapting to new changes as such. And you must prepare staff for changes. You do not just come overnight that ABCD has to be done with this. Prepare, explain why before you go to what. It must be prepared as such. Of course, leadership influence. Leaders set the tone, encourage accountability, and empower staff to actively contribute to quality. Okay? You are a leader because you need to give direction. You are not a leader to undermine. You are a leader because you need to encourage accountability. If staff actually feel they are part of a program from the word go, it enhances ownership, it enhances accountability, and it actually empowers that staff because you believe and trust that staff. It empowers that to contribute to quality. So colleagues, let us actually look at it. Why does team dynamics actually matter? Of course, we look at strong team dynamics lead to one, fewer errors because we are collaborating, we are adapting, we are communicating well. It leads to a high morale for staff because staff feel part of the team. They feel recognized, they feel wanted, they feel needed. Of course, it's a shared responsibility for quality. If you are part of the program, if part of parcel of the implementation of that program, of course, you feel the ownership, you feel the responsibility, the quality. Of course, ultimately, it creates a culture where excellence becomes natural. And that is what we are aiming at as laboratory personnel. Excellence, quality service provision should be part of you, okay? Should be part of you. You can't discharge, you cannot be discharging quality service when people are looking at you or when somebody is on your back, okay? It should be a natural thing where you are being, whether you're being watched or not, it is a natural aspect of actually trying as much as possible to be true to yourself. The worst thing or the best thing I always tell myself is assume that that client is your parent back home in the village. How do you feel what you are doing to that patient if it's done to your parent back in the village? So that is just a question that you can actually look at aside. So we look at ways in which we can actually implement team dynamics, ways in which we can make our staff work together, ways in which we can make, because this is usually the hardest thing for any manager, staff management. How do I ensure that these staffs are actually working together as a team? And it starts with these small things that we think we can just brush them off. The small things actually come to build into bigger things. So how do we achieve team dynamics? There are various practical ways that I look at this. And number one, you as a leader, you as a manager, lead with inclusion, not imposition. Do not impose changes on people. Include people in aspects from the word go, from inception. Include all staff. Let them feel part and parcel of new programs so that do not impose it on people. Look for better ways of making sure that each one of them is actually involved in this. And how do we do that? Step-by-step guide on how you can lead with inclusion and not imposition. Engage early. Engage early. Involve staff from the start in setting quality objectives and improvement plans. If you have quality objectives, if you have improvement plans, engage with your staff from the word go. Let it not come that when it comes to implementation is when you come to them that we need to do this. From the word go, when it comes, even when it comes to setting those quality objectives, set them with your staff. Let their opinions count. Let there be a clear roadmap. Include them from the word go. The quality improvement plans, include them from the word go. Okay? They'll feel part and parcel of that program. They feel direct ownership of that program. Number two, invite input. Seek ideas and feedbacks on SOPs, workflows, and problem solving. Like, request your staff to actually have a direct input. Whatever I've given input on, I feel that I was considered, okay? So ideally, invite input from your staff, invite input from your colleagues. Let them give their suggestions. In your monthly staff meetings, let your staff give suggestions, okay? Let their suggestions actually be considered. And once their suggestions are actually considered, co-create solutions. Look at a problem, look at an unconformity, look at an opportunity for improvement. We sit down together as a team and we come up with a solution. You cannot go in the office somewhere, sit and come up with a solution on your own and you want us to implement. We will not feel part and parcel of that solution. And it will actually create direct resistance on implementation. So from the word go, let us engage our staffs early. Let us invite input from our staffs. Let us co-create solutions as such. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, learn to acknowledge contributions. This is where most of us have problems. Show how staff input shaped the final decisions. Kindly, if a staff gave an input and you build on that input to come up with a final suggestion, acknowledge that contribution, acknowledge that staff. It's never easy. In fact, that is the single most important way you can motivate your staff. I'll feel so happy if I gave a suggestion somewhere and this suggestion was actually taken seriously and implemented. And now when we are discussing the implementation bit, we say, you acknowledge that this came from Wekesa, this came from Onyango, this came from Koech, from someone, okay? Appreciate and acknowledge contribution from people. And that goes hand in hand with promoting ownership. Okay, encourage accountability by giving teams a stake in outcomes. Kindly, this is a very important aspect. And if actually the end result is a bonus, this is a simple cry to all of us. Let us make sure each and every person who contributed to that actually benefits from that. That is the single most important aspect that you can ever have as a manager. So what is the importance of leading with inclusion and less imposition? It builds ownership. That one we have talked about, enhances compliance, improves staff morale, recognition and participation, boosts motivation and teamwork. That is as direct as it is. Of course, it encourages this staff to be more innovative, to bring solutions on the table and not problems, okay? Of course, ultimately, it strengthens risk management and also it supports sustainable quality, okay? And when you talk of supporting sustainable quality, we are talking of changes become part of the culture, not just a temporary initiative as such. So, number two, we look at explain why before the what. Okay, I believe the point is home. Explain why this new aspect is needed before you bring what then needs to be done. You know, if you come to me and you tell me why I need temperature charting done, you explain to me clearly and I understand it very well. When it comes to charting, I'll do it as diligently as possible, okay? So start with the why before you tell me what, because if the biggest downfall for most of us is we always start with what. What are you supposed to do? Do maintenance chart. maintain chart maintenance. You are not telling me why is this important. Once I understand why it's important and the risk that might arise if it's not done, it makes me feel good when I'm actually doing the actual work as such. Of course, under steps we look at connectors to outcomes. For every procedure, explain why it matters. Example, labeling with 2 identifiers prevents misdiagnosis or wrong treatment. So like, you want to upgrade, to intensify your labeling strategies, you look at it that you want to have at least 2 identifiers. You tell your phlebotomist or whoever is collecting the samples why that actually is important. Then you come to then what are you supposed to do as such. Okay. Use relatable examples when you are having this discussion. You are looking at share real incidents, either from your lab or published cases. Discuss consequences. What are the errors that might arise if you do not have a BCD in place, so that you can assist in driving the point home as such. Just a bit, I'm having a, thank you. So of course, we look at number 3, reinforcing understanding. Make sure that before you try to start explaining the what behind it, make sure that we have clear understanding of the processes that you have put in place. Under this, we are talking of encourage your staff to reflect or explain back what could happen if steps are skipped. Incorporate the why into SOP training, meetings, and reminders. Make sure that your staff understand why this has to happen before you dive in. You can also go ahead in using visual and written aids to just try and drive the point home as such. What is the importance of this, of explaining why before what? It enhances understanding. Staff see the connection between procedures and patient outcomes or safety. It reduces mechanical compliance. Mechanical compliance is what we are talking of, the tick box mindset, and it encourages critical thinking from your staff. Of course, it increases motivation for your staff. When people understand why actions matter, they are motivated and they become more willing to follow procedures consistently. Of course, ultimately, it reduces errors. Understanding the rationale helps staff catch mistakes proactively instead of blindly following instructions. Of course, it promotes ownership. Staff feel responsible for outcomes rather than just completing, and leading to better adherence to quality standards. Okay. Improves training effectiveness. Of course, once you explain, once you drive the why point at home, of course, when it comes to what or implementation processes, it becomes clear and easy. That goes way in improving training effectiveness. Of course, it facilitates change management. Explaining the why makes it easier to introduce new processes or policies without resistance. If you came to your colleagues, if you came to your staff, the people you are working with, and with a new concept, and you started as to why, explaining why, driving the why point home, and once they have understood the why point home, you then transition to what, it actually prepares people well for change. Number 3, way in which we can enforce team dynamics, shift from policing to coaching. You are not a police officer, you are a lab personnel. Okay? Let us avoid looking for mistakes. Let us avoid following up people looking what they have done wrong, when they have done it wrong, and why they have done it wrong. Let us focus on why have you done this wrong? How do we then, after a mistake has happened, how do we transition to better? Okay? We must always have, every aspect has the flip side. Every non-conformity has the flip side. So we are talking of, stop looking at errors as errors. Let us look at errors as opportunities for improvement. And opportunities of improvement come through coaching. Okay, of course, steps how we can achieve that, we look at change audit language, replace finding errors with identifying improvement opportunities. This goes through those of us who are actually tasked with the responsibilities of auditing. You know, I've always asked myself, why do we call non-compliances findings? Why don't we call non-compliances as areas of improvement? That is what that point is just about. Because the moment you call it finding errors in laboratory settings, errors come with consequences. There's this thing that has just been embedded in people's mind that errors are punishable, errors come with consequences. Okay, that might not be the case. Okay, an error is just giving you an opportunity of fulfillment. Let us look at them as opportunities of improvement rather than punishable areas. Because if you take them as findings, it creates an environment where people hold back. People do not disclose. If today something bad happened or a serious error happened in the lab, how many of us will disclose? Almost zero. Why do we do that? Because we fear that there are consequences actually attached to findings. There are consequences actually attached to non-conformities. We in the management, we should now start looking at it. How do we then make sure that we do not attach consequence to findings and actually treat those consequences as areas of improvement, so that we encourage our people to disclose as many non-conformities as possible so that we can sort them out proactively. So emphasize learning and development and not blame. We are not here to blame anybody. Once you do an unconformity, if you come across an unconformity or you're involved in an unconformity, declare it. Let it be considered as an opportunity for improvement, and that will come with training ABCD here and there. Let us not put a blame tag or a consequence on unconformities, because it actually drains people and it leads to holding off or holding back. Of course, we must have a positive reinforcement under step 2. When we are saying of during audits, praise correct action first, then discuss minor deviations as learning points. Boss, let us start with the positives. Even when you're an auditor, when you are writing an audit report, you must start with the positives. The moment we put the negative first, it drives negative energy. Okay? In your meetings, appreciate staff first. Drive positivity first before you start discussing the minor areas of non-conformity. We must have that clearly put. Of course, we must document good practices to encourage repetition. Where something good has been done, make it public. Do not only make bad things public. Okay? Where a staff certified a requirement, ABCD, acknowledge them in public. Do not always just wait for an opportunity to demean them in public. Okay? That goes a very long way in handling that. Of course, we must look at supportive training, retraining, offer side-by-side coaching for first-time mistakes instead of formal reprimands. You know, colleagues have seen somebody lose a job because of an unconformity somewhere. Okay? And that is something that I'll never wish, because by that time, I never had decisions. I never had the position to make decisions. And I watched my colleague then just lose a job because of this. For a first-time offense, something that they could just have sat down and discussed with the manager so that they come up with an amicable way of actually discussing this or handling that. So we must always give room, have side-by-side coaching, have continuous mentorship programs for this staff, so that we want to bring that. There's no 100% perfect staff. Every staff has their own weaknesses. So we must capitalize on the strengths But for the areas that they show weakness, we must always find out a way in which we can build on those weaknesses to actually transform them into successes. Use demonstration, shadowing, and paired work to show proper technique. Unfortunately, where people have problems is you as a manager, you go ahead in reprimanding me for a case that you can't solve yourself. That is something that we can improve on for those of us who are actually on the other side. Of course, under that, monitor outcomes once you have retrained, track improvement in performance rather than focusing on the mistake itself. Let us also share success stories where coaching prevented errors and improved efficiency. Where a staff has gone through coaching, where a staff has gone through mentorship, and there is actually justifiable success, justifiable improvement in processes and efficiency. Let us share those success stories. Of course, replace error spotting language with opportunity for improvement. Let us look at errors as opportunities for improvement. Let us not attach a reprimand on errors, because the moment you attach a reprimand on errors, these errors will never be disclosed and you'll always be having recurrence in issues. So once we decide that, yes, this is an opportunity for improvement, we look at it as such. Use positive reinforcement. And with positive reinforcement, I'm looking at praise correct practices during audits just to highlight, as compared to highlighting nonconformities. Okay? Where things are done correctly, praise that. Okay? When we as humans, we are wired differently, where we require praise, even if you come at a later point and start pointing out issues A, B, C, D, it hits different than you just going straight to issues as such. Of course, we talked of offering side-by-side retraining instead of formal reprimands for the first-time mistakes. It all counts that much. Of course, what is the importance of that? It builds trust and respect. Staff feel supported rather than judged. This encourages open communication about mistakes without fearing punishment. Definitely, it goes way in.
Sorry, I think we lost the speaker, and maybe we'll try and reach out to him. Yeah, all in all, it's been a very, very wonderful session, and we have been learning a lot. I can see your comments, and many of you are appreciating the presentation. So we were actually at the tail end of the presentation, and then we get into a few questions. So in case you have a question that you feel you need to ask, just write there in the Q&A section. We should be able to respond adequately. So once again, if you have a question that you feel or a comment that you feel you need to maybe ask, you can just go to the Q&A section and just drop in your question or your concern. So I hope you can hear me. I hope I'm clear, or I'm also not audible. Okay, am I audible? Good. Thank you so much, Maurice, Samuel, and Peter, for confirming that I'm very audible. So I was saying a while ago that we lost the speaker when we were at the very, very tail end of the presentation. and I think he was doing his second last slide. And I'm sorry for that, for the inconveniences that has caused. And maybe I've already gotten hold of him and he's rejoining. So if you have a question or a comment, you can type in the Q&A section so that we can be able to read it and maybe share together. But indeed, it was a very, very good presentation that I'm sure touches all of us. Thank you, Moranga. Thank you, Moranga, and everyone who can hear me. So as we get hold of him and maybe come to the very tail end of this presentation, I'm inviting any questions or concerns. If you feel you need to speak, you can just raise your hand. I will be able to unmute you and you shall be able to maybe talk. Stephanie, I can see your hand. I'm not sure whether you want to comment. So ensure that your background is very clear. And then you can, I'm unmuting you and you can proceed to talk. So Stephanie, you can unmute. Stephanie William. Stephanie. Okay. Looks like he's not ready yet. So is there anyone else who? Sorry, everyone. We want to apologize, and Davis is back. So I hope you can hear me. And Davis, if you can hear me, once again, sorry for the inconvenience. And maybe you can proceed to wind up this presentation.
Thank you, Fred. And members, sorry for that. My laptop restarted in the middle of presentation, but we were just getting to the end of it. Number 4, we were looking at embed quality into daily workflows, make SOPs easy to find and follow. No one should have to hunt for them in all file cabinets. For those SOPs that are operational, let us make them as easily available as possible. Of course, we must integrate simple checklists into routine processes like sample reception, analyzer, QC, startup. We must have simple checklists that can help us drive that point home. And definitely, we must put a mark of quality behind that tick that you put on that checklist aspect as such. Of course, use data as a neutral conversation starter. In most cases, we are looking at share monthly trend charts for errors, TAT, and customer complaints. Share them with your staff, share them with your colleagues. Frame discussions around systems, not individuals. Do not discuss individuals, discuss the performance outcomes. Like what is the cause for these delays? Okay, instead of who is delaying results, what is the cause? Let us discuss the system performance and not the individuals. For individual bit, we can actually come with it to it when we are talking of closure of these aspects to enhance the performance aspects as such. So how do we then achieve that? We must have data that actually supports our justification. At number 6, we look at recognize and celebrate quality wins. Highlight departments or staffs who reduced error rates, improved TAT, or scored highly in external quality assessments. Acknowledge even small improvements. This keeps the morale going. Colleagues, for those of us who are in leadership positions, let us not take over the wins of our staffs. Let us make sure that we acknowledge and we direct true ownership to the individuals who actually helped drive the point home as such. Number 7, we look at keep feedback two-way. Have regular short quality huddles where staff can raise concerns or propose changes. Maintain anonymous feedback channels for staff to flag barriers to quality without fear. Okay? Where anonymity is required, make sure we maintain that. Let us not be in a habit where you have been told something in confidence, something that can actually help improve the process, then you come up putting it as direct as such. Respect, at number 8, we respect workload and realities. When we make plans, make sure we have workload in our mind and real reality aspects of lab operations in our mind. Before introducing a new quality requirement, assess the impact of this requirement on workload and the resources. Okay? Offer tools and manpower if the change will add extra steps. Let us not put changes that will actually drive more need for personnel and more need for resources, and we do not provide those resources, we do not provide that personnel, okay? Let us also align our workload and realities as we try to sort that matters out. The bottom line or take-home point is resistance is reduced when quality improvement feels like collaborative. Resistance is reduced when quality improvement feels like a collaborative, supportive, and meaningful process, and not a bureaucratic checklist. Thank you very much. Fred, back to you. Fred? Fred, back to you.
Yes, I can hear you very well. So to all the participants, I think it was such a wonderful presentation. And we have really enjoyed. It was very insightful. And Wilfred Moriasi is asking that, do we honestly have managers who follow this procedure? Maybe that's food for thought. And maybe it's a call to action that we need to just put the presentation into our day-to-day practice so that it can assist us in our routine work. So I think, Davis, it was a very nice presentation, and it has brought a lot of concerns and reactions, especially for those of us who manage quality in our respective labs. And today, Davis has put it clear that this should be everyone's responsibility. And I'm sure that we have been able to learn something from this. So, Davis, there's not so much. Continue to share our experiences from wherever we are. What could be some of the challenges in implementing some of these strategies, or what could be the challenges in achieving some of these standards? So maybe back to you, because I can't see much from our participants. Back to you if maybe you have any closing remarks.
Thank you, Fred. And I only have a message for our colleagues, because I believe by the fact that you are in this forum, it means you are my colleague and I'm your colleague. I have this message for you. Policies set rules, but people uphold quality. I'll repeat that again. My message to you today as professional colleagues is policies set rules, but people uphold quality. When teamwork thrives, quality becomes a habit, not a requirement. A laboratory that moves beyond policies creates an environment where, number one, quality is built in every process. Number two, staff feel safe and are valued. And number three, the ultimate beneficiary, who is the patient, receives accurate, timely, and reliable results. It is always a pleasure to have these kind of discussions with you, colleagues, and I very much appreciate your presence today. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, team.
Wonderful, Davis. That was such a wonderful parting shot. And I'm hoping that wherever we are, colleagues, we shall be able, or we should be able to find this information to be informative and apply it in our day-to-day practice. Otherwise, team, we have come to the very end of today's webinar. It was such a wonderful session. And as always, it's delightful to host all of you. And on behalf of Lab Medicine Society of Kenya, we want to say thank you. And in case you have any further questions or concerns, you can always reach out to us. Otherwise, thank you so much. And your CPD points will be updated in the next 24 hours. Otherwise, have a great evening. Thank you.